He ran 3 times for President of the United States, twice as a Republican and once as a third-party candidate. But Ron Paul's libertarian views, those of limited constitutional government, low taxes and free markets, put him outside the mainstream of American politics, which makes his take on this year's race for the White House all the more interesting. But before we get there, if you've been following the U.S. presidential election at all, you know the biggest headlines belong to 2 political outsiders or anti-establishment candidates, Republican businessman Donald Trump and self-described Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders. According to the latest Quinnipiac University poll, Trump's lead over his nearest Republican rival has soared to 20 points nationally, while Sanders has pulled into a virtual tie with former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Joining us now to talk about all of this is CCTV's Sean Callebs. And Sean, both Sanders and Trump scored decisive victories in New Hampshire. They have very different styles, but why are they resonating so well with voters?
You know, they absolutely are, Anand. We just came back from spending a week on the campaign trail, and both Trump and Sanders have really hit a nerve. U.S. voters aren't just frustrated, they are simply angry. About 50% of GOP or Republican voters polled believe that they feel betrayed by their party. Now, that is significant. While Jeb Bush, Cruz, Kasich, all the other establishment candidates try to reach their way to the top of the polls, Trump has simply lapped the field. What we're hearing from voters is they're fed up with Washington insiders, and they're fed up with candidates who are beholden to large donors, people who receive the super PAC money, like Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. And both of those candidates have seen a significant hit in the polls because they're tied so closely to money. And it certainly didn't go over well when people found out that Hillary Clinton was paid nearly $700,000 by a giant Wall Street firm for a speech, the same time she's saying, look, I'm going to take on Wall Street.
Sean, polls show that part of the American electorate feel that America is losing its place as a world superpower. How much of an impact is that feeling having? I
really don't think you can overstate that. A Pew Research Institute study recently found that the United States likes to vision itself as on top of the world heap of countries. But that has fallen from 38% in 2012 down to 28% in 2014. And these 2 candidates are telling voters what they want to hear. Let's just go through some of their promises. They don't know how they're going to fund these, but Donald Trump saying, look, I'm going to build a wall between the United States and Mexico, make Mexico pay for it. I'm going to stop Muslims from coming to this country. Any Syrian refugees that are here now, I'm going to kick them out and not let any more in. And that's playing well to middle America, who sees its grip slipping away. Now, as far as Bernie Sanders, you talk about the economic stagnation. It's very difficult to overstate just how frustrated Americans are. Many of them simply haven't rebounded from the awful economic crisis back in 2008. Well, Sanders is telling those voters what they want to hear. He'll give people free education, better health care system. These are the kind of things that really resonate with voters. Again, we don't know on and how they're going to fund them. And let's think back, too. While these 2 candidates are doing so well, in the end, the establishment seems to do so well. They got Mitt Romney in the last election, John McCain before that. So does Trump have the staying power to really last at the top of the polls? And can Bernie Sanders really position himself as the outsider after being a congressman for 16 years and his 2nd term as U.S. Senator?
Yep, we will know in the months ahead. Sean, thanks a lot. We'll see you later in the program. Joining us now from Texas is the host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report, former U.S. Congressman and presidential candidate Ron Paul. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Good. Nice to be with you today.
As we just heard from our reporter there, we are seeing during this presidential cycle the rise of what are being termed anti-establishment candidates. We have Donald Trump on the Republican side, Bernie Sanders on the Democrat side. You know what that is. You were one of those anti-establishment candidates not so long ago. But this time round, how do you explain this phenomenon?
Well, I explain it that we're entering an era that we're recognizing that the system that we have in the United States isn't working well. The economic system is failing. The Keynesian model doesn't work. That means that they can print money, run up debt, and it doesn't work. And the people are frustrated. And it also leads to an economic crisis. And it's really an economic problem that everybody's speaking to, but they find a lot of other things to talk about. And this is the reason that we have this, and we have the anti-government, because people are frustrated and angry, and they're striking out. But they don't understand very well how we got into this mess, what the problems are and what the solutions are. For the most part, I see the current crop of politicians offering only more government, not less government, which is what I was offering over the many years.
So people are unhappy with policies, but do you find that people are also unhappy with the manner in which elections are run, with the process? Do they feel it's rigged?
Yeah, I think so. There's no doubt about it. I've complained a lot that we have a foreign policy deeply flawed, which contributes to our economic problems because, you know, there's so many expenditures. But we send young men over to the Middle East and pretend that we know what's best for the Middle East, and we're going to spread democracy and American exceptionalism. Total failure, and look at the uselessness of the last 15 years of war. And then in countries, we preach to them, we occupy them, and say you have to have elections like we do in the West, and sometimes they do have elections, and sometimes they elect people we don't like. So we go back to antagonism and bombing that country once again. In this country, we essentially have only one party. Even though there's a lot of bickering going on between Republicans and Democrats, there is only one party because they endorse, you know, the financial system, the Federal Reserve System, the foreign policy, the attack on civil liberties, the welfare state. And when it comes to politics, if you're in an alternative party, you don't get a fair shake. So you have one party that controls things. So when it comes to a debate of the real issues, whether you're from the Green Party or the Libertarian Party, you're never really included. It's very difficult to get on ballots. So the process is in many ways rigged. Regardless of the outcome of this election, believe me, policies won't change. The spending will continue. There will be no shrinkage of government. The troops won't march home until this country is totally bankrupt, and we admit it, because the dollar will no longer function.
Let's look at the leading candidates right now in this election. Let's look at Donald Trump. He's generating a lot of controversy. He's been using some very colorful language. And if we look at some of the things he's been talking about, he wants to build a wall. He wants to temporarily ban Muslims from entering the United States. He wants to deport 11 million undocumented workers. President Obama, just talking the other day, said that he doesn't think that Donald Trump will be president. What is your opinion of Donald Trump?
Well, it's not very good, but I'm not so sure he's not going to be president because he's able to tap into the anger out there. So walls become appealing to a lot of people. Unfortunately, I think in due time they'll recognize that walls have been used as much to keep people in as to keeping people out. And already financially, people want to leave this country and take their money with them, and there's a lot of walls being built. So I think that Trump certainly does have a chance to become president, but he doesn't offer anything different, even though it seems that way. But hardly will fences and walls be the answer to our problems, or tariffs on our trading partners. That is not a solution, you know, to our economic problems. We have to look at the monetary system, and we have to look at the fiasco of our Federal Reserve. But just putting on tariffs on countries, we'll punish China. We'll put on a 35% tariff on there as if there wouldn't be any consequences. It's complete nonsense, and yet there's a lot of people say, well, at least you don't do something. But if you're doing some of the same old stuff and the wrong things, it'll only make our problems worse.
Let's look at the Democrat side. Bernie Sanders is one of the leading candidates there. And, you know, here's the thing. Many of the positions he has taken identify with the positions that you have taken. He's running largely on income inequality. He wants the wealthy to pay more taxes. He's against special interests and corporations contributing to campaigns. He's also for health care as a birthright. And he wants free college tuition. What do you make of those issues?
Well, there aren't very many of those that I agree with, other than the assessment that there are problems out there. There's income inequality, but the answer isn't more taxation and take from one group who may be productive and redistributing it. I mean, he advertises himself as a socialist, so that's hardly, you know, the answer. But he has to look more toward monetary policy and the Federal Reserve, why there's income maldistribution, because it's the destruction of a currency that destroys the middle class, and that is what's happening. So yes, he is addressing some of the problems, because when the bailouts came, he and I worked together to try to point out, well, the bailouts are going to the very, very wealthy. But he's not against the bailouts, he's not against the government intervention, he's just picking and choosing which groups will get it. And I think that the government's purpose should be to protect liberty, not to pick and choose who the special interests are. And I'm also convinced that the freer society, the more prosperous society, and the greater the size is of the middle class. And yet Bernie, with his idea that everything is free education and free medicine and all this, I mean, if you stop and think about it, it is totally silly. Where's he going to get the money? Oh, it's from the government. Oh, we're going to tax more people. Productivity is down. We're moving into a recession. Prosperous corporations have no incentive to stay. They leave the country. And there's only one way he can pay for this, or the people who make these promises, and that is run up debt and borrow the money or print the money. And that's what our problem is. So there's no answers to be found in more government or a socialist system.
To what extent has the current campaign finance system corrupted politics in this country? As Bernie Sanders pointed out in one of the debates, he was talking about Wall Street donating huge sums of money to candidates and saying that, look, they don't do this for the fun of it. They do this for a reason. They want something back.
Well, the question is why do people donate a lot of money to Sanders? They want something too. They want somebody who will promise them a free lunch. So there's a lot of money. He collects it differently. It might be even more honorable than going to the Wall Streeters, like Democrats and Republicans always do. And that's why he has more credibility, because Hillary goes to Wall Street just like all the Republicans do. And that's why there's no real difference, between the two parties. But money is the symptom. It isn't the cause. The cause is the government is out of control, it continues to grow, and it's controlled by the special interest. So you have to have strict limitation of the government power. And that's what the Constitution does, but there's no respect for the Constitution. If we followed the Constitution, the government wouldn't be allowed to do the things that they do. They wouldn't be allowed to go to war without a declaration. They wouldn't be allowed to have a welfare system passing out free stuff for anybody who can put together a majority vote and dictate to the minority who has to produce. That system is doomed to fail, and that's why we have a crisis now, is it is failing, because they can't paper over this pretense that government is something that can take care of everybody's needs. There's no money left. They can't tax anybody. It's running, we can't borrow anymore, and soon we won't be able to print anymore. As soon as foreigners decide we're sick and tired of buying American debt and it's not much better than anybody else's, then the whole story will change and the whole world's going to suffer from it, because the whole world currency system and financial system is built on a dollar reserve currency, and it's just paper. It's imaginary computer entries. So this is the real dilemma. They're unwilling to live up to the fact and admit the fact the government is too big and they spend too much money and they need to cut back, and we need to release creative energy by providing more liberty for the people, rather than saying that there's a government answer. There's no authoritarian on the left and no authoritarian on the right that said, well, I can fix this, just give me more power and I'll take care of everybody.
So what you're talking about there, about the role of government in people's lives, is that the core principle of what it is to be called a libertarian? I mean, explain to our international audience, what is it? What is a libertarian?
A libertarian is somebody who believes, of course, in personal liberty, and liberty is a personal thing. It is not collective. You don't gain liberty because you belong to a group. So we don't talk about women's rights or gay rights or anything else. Everybody has an absolute equal right as an individual, and it comes to them naturally. There are two rules you have to follow if you're a libertarian, and this is a job for a lot of people. One, you can't ever initiate force against somebody else. You can't be an aggressor. You can't steal from your neighbor. Most people recognize that, but nobody wants to consider the fact, well, if I send the government and the IRS agent, I can steal all I want from my neighbor. No aggression. We can't aggress against each other. We can't use the government to aggress each other. We have to live up to our promises, and this works in foreign policy as well. We can't have preemptive war where our government decides, well, we got to attack them and kill them because someday they might come here and do us harm. That's aggression. And the libertarian says no initiation of aggression. If you have a contract, which is so key in a free society, is if you write a contract and you agree to something, you have to follow through. You can't lie, cheat, or steal, or kill.
I want to move on to one foreign policy issue. You said that the U.S. must continue to believe and be confident that trading with China is beneficial. How do you view the U.S.-China relationship?
Well, a lot better off than they were than when I was in high school. You know, I was in high school, and one of my teachers was drafted, and he had been in World War II. He was drafted to go to fight in Korea. Most people didn't even know where Korea was. He never came home. He was killed. And then for many, many years, the antagonisms existed, and it wasn't exactly a friendly country, and we didn't do many things right, but I think what Nixon did was fantastic. He opened up the doors, and as far as I'm concerned, the relationships have tremendously improved, and it annoys me to no end to see conflicts, you know, in the South China Sea. It's so unnecessary, and we're responsible for a lot of that, but I think both sides are responsible to try to maintain their sovereignty. But I try to tell the American people that how would we react if, you know, there were a lot of foreign aircraft carriers and submarines and vessels 20 miles off our shores in the Gulf of Mexico? We wouldn't be too happy. So there'd be reason to back off a little bit. But trade is great, and we trade with trillions of dollars. And then you have a guy like Trump comes along and says, I won't ever put up with any baloney from China. I'm going to punish China. We'll tax them, and they'll go out of business, not realizing that that's stirring up a trade war, and trade wars sometimes leads to these military conflicts. So I like free trade, and it's worked. I think that's one of the reasons that once we started talking to and training with China, things got so much better, and even with Russia, things got so much better. But now there we are with a foreign policy that's doing the same thing with Russia, as if our government, you know, has to have a Cold War going on. It's so useless and unnecessary, and our founders were very explicit. The more we trade with people, the less likely we are to fight with people. And I am a strong believer in that, so the freer the trade, the better.